This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching, and today's video is hand stitching a half log cabin block. The easiest way to show you where we want to go is to show you my finished product, but it's not sewn together yet. But these are my log cabin blocks that were hand stitched. And the way I laid out my finished blocks was just one example. There are a lot of ways that you can do it, and it's fun to do those. Here is the basic block, and many people have seen this, where you have the dark strips of fabric and then you have the light strips. The 2, 4, 6, 8 are light strips. This pattern will make an 8-inch square. It uses 2-inch strips of material. Here's an individual block that's been finished, and you know, you've seen before that I like to open my seams. Well, this is hand stitched, and then the seams are opened and pressed nice and flat. So let's get started. First thing you want to have are 2-inch strips of material, and you can go the width of the fabric, and that's a nice way to make a bunch of strips. And you want to pick out your 5 primary colors. And you can see these are my darks right here, my 5 darks. All right, then you need a minimum of 4 light fabrics. And I had some short pieces of some and some others, so you can add other fabrics, but they need to stay in that same tone so that it's that lightness like you saw at the very beginning on the quilt. And as I was going, I'd have all these strips, and I decided, well, the light strips, as I cut those, I just started rolling them up on a pencil and sticking a pin in them. And so when I look in the container, it's really easy to find those. And you don't have to use the fabric that's cut all the way across the strips. If you have smaller strips and enough to do what we're going to do, you can use those. And that's what I did with a lot of the light fabrics. And then what we're going to do is you're going to need thread, scissors, if you're going to hand stitch. Now this can be machine sewn, but it was really neat to do it by hand, and I just sit there and do it, and it's a great carry along. And I tended to use a light thread and a dark thread, so when I added the dark thread, a dark fabric, I'd use that, the light thread for the light. And here we go. Here's step 1. Step 1 is to lay out your first dark fabric that you're going to use and cut a 2-inch square, which you can see right there I did. All right, then I'm going to take my 2-inch square and pretend that this is the same square here, and I sewed it to the first white strip. Okay, so I took that piece and I laid it on my light and I sewed it. All right, then I cut it, and when I open it up, it looks like this, and this is the beginning. And then I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to press it. And these are so small you can finger press them to do what we're going to do. All right, then I'm going to take that piece and I'm going to take it and I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to my next dark strip that I wanted to use, because we're going to go dark, light, and I lay it on there and pretend like there it is, and I've already sewn it. And then I'm going to take and do one more thing. This is going to be the beginning of our pattern. So let's see, did I get that? Yes, I did. I got that sewed, and I'll open it up for you. And it's going to look like that. And if you look at your pattern, you'll see that we're going great. All right. The one thing you want to do here was when you put that down and cut it off, you want to cut an extra 2-inch square, and you're going to hold it for a minute. Okay. And I'll show you where that'll go, because we're going to go on to the next strip. So we're going up, and we're going to take this block that we just made, and what you do is you think white up, Okay, this is neat because you're always, when you're adding a light color on, think light up, like you light up my life. So this one is going to lay on this white strip, the light strip. All right, now this has been sewn down and cut off, and so I'm going to open it up. And when I compare it to that first box that we had, I'm on the right track because my darks are together and my lights are together. But you remember we had that extra 2-inch square? You're also going to take that one and sew it onto this light strip. All right? So this is where it's been sewn on. Cut off, open it up, and all of a sudden you've got 2 pieces that you're going to be working with. And this is where it starts building towards that assembly model. So the next thing we're going to have is going to be dark. All right? And now we've got 2 pieces that we can add to it. So I'm going to take and look at this, and I'm going to think light up. All right? So my last strip goes. There's my light up. Here's this strip that we just did with that extra 2-inch. Now this, I get that open and lay it down, light up, because it's going towards that end. And I'm going to take and I'm going to hand sew that. Now what I did is I started with a knot here, went across, knotted off, just ran the thread over, did a back stitch there to catch it, and then kept going. And just remember now, because it's a dark strip, you also want to cut your new 2-inch square off the bottom of this, so that when you go to your new white strip, you're going to have 1, 2, 3 pieces now to go with. Now let's get to the fun part, the really fun part. I've finally gotten several sections. I've got 4 sections, and I'm going to take my next long strip. And I know this is the color I need because I've looked at the front, and that's the color I haven't used. So I'm going to lay it out. Now, if your strip's not this long, it doesn't matter. You can take some short strips and just keep going, and don't have to worry about sewing those strips together. You just may have to make sure they'll fit the back of the piece that you're doing. And so there was the piece, and I've laid them all down. And if you remember, it was light up. So to my left is light, 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 light. And then when I started, I had already cut off, I'm doing the dark strip, so I'm cut off another 2-inch square for the next fabric that we use. So this piece is gone. And I just start at the end down here, and I stitch, stitch, knot off, run through, back stitch, 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 all the way through, self-explanatory. And then I jump up and get to the iron. Don't sit too long. Get up, iron it flat, cut them apart, and the very first one is going to be finished. And it's going to drop off into your finished box. And then there's your new part. Now I've got to figure out what the next light color is. And so what I did is I looked at the one that was left, and I said, okay, I've used these 3 colors. I haven't used this color. And so the next part, I'm going to use that color. This one will be laid on there. This one will be laid on there. This piece, and then this new one. And you'll see as I keep going, I'll just keep and have a continuous piece that starts to roll. And this was part of my finished pile. And they're really pretty. And you can start to see what a dominant color in here. And as you audition your fabrics you're going to put together, you might want to see that you don't have like 3 or 4 dominant colors that fight against each other. And then we come back to the one that I had finished, and it's not sewn together. And you know, everything's going to look different when it's sewn together. It actually looks really, really good. But then switch those blocks around. That makes it a lot of fun too. And like I said, this can be done on the sewing machine. Now the things you got to remember, we'll move back around to where we started, is that for this one you want to start with 5 darks and 4 lights. But if your lights are in the same family, you can use those. You want to remember that anytime you have a dark fabric, then you cut a new square and you hold that square to keep going. When you lay your strips, your new pieces on, you got to think light up. All right, and then always add your dark box by itself, your 2-inch one, so that starts the beginning of your next box. And remember, we walked through the strips. I hope that's helpful to you. It's very interesting. I read that this was related to some Amish stitching, the way the Amish might stitch these together. So everybody have a great day and do a log cabin block.